thank you guys. Thanks for allowing a Kansan to come up here. Obviously Nebraska, better than Kansans. But anyway, yeah, allowing me to come up here and tell you guys how to do everything wrong. So probably rainfall environments are fairly similar to what we have with you guys. So we'll kind of talk about some of where that at. Thanks to Sean and Cindy of the Soil Health Alliance for letting me come up here and say this. Sean and I spoke together, I believe, 2 years ago in Holyoke. And just in case there is any questions, I am no relation to General George. So you asked me afterwards? Sorry, no relation. So anyway, topic is, can Regenerative Ag get me out of debt? So a little background when we started. I started farming in 1993. We had 265 acres. I am a first generation farmer. So I grew up riding bicycles, going to the swimming pool, everything the urban kid did, right? So that's how I started. Worked through farmers all through high school and on. Was kind of how I got that started into farming. In 1994, you know, we were doing some no-till milo. Tried a little bit of no-till wheat. It did not work real well in our area. So back then, it was just probably still full conventional is what was the easiest thing. It's what we were taught to do. In '99, we did go to some minimum till wheat. We were reducing some tillage passes. Still, all of our milo corn was being no-tilled. 2005 was full no-till. 2008, we started introducing cover crops. I have no livestock, so if you want to hear about grazing, I'd highly suggest you haul butt to one of the grazing ones. But we have started introducing my nephew, my wife's nephew, is my hired man. He has the cattle, so I'm the best uncle ever because he gets to graze for free as long as he does it on the manner of how I want it grazed. So as of today, we're just a little bit over 5,000 acres dry land. We recently just did take on a little bit of irrigation. We'll show some stuff of what we're going to try to do with this irrigation with very limited water. We have good water with it, but we're going to try to preserve what we have with it. So this is kind of a nutshell for us in 2023. It sucked. We were dry, we were windy, a lot of heat units, and more wind and dry, and this. And so what's going to see with like, from us, and you know, I can't remember if you guys in South Dakota, was it 21 you had your drought or 22? Was a little rougher in here. Definitely started 21 for us, rolled into 22, we had 1.5 foot profile. Beginning of 23, we had 0 inches of profile in the soil. So December 20, we'll just talk a little bit about this. So December 15th of 21, I don't know if you guys remember, so we had just this ridiculous wind event. We ended up having 100-mile-an-hour winds, created havoc. You know, we had tons of wildfires that came out, just burned thousands and thousands of acres. This field that's off here, this is, the video won't play, I'm sure, but these are corn cobs that are hitting my car. That's coming off this field. It's a irrigation ground that was drilled dry, so he's thinking he's doing the right thing, but man, you just can't beat Mother Nature sometime. It's just that my neighbors lost houses in the fires from flaming corn stalks. Broke the windows and went into their house. It's just the event we've never seen to see withstand 100-mile-an-hour winds for, you know, hours at a time like that. It was just unbelievable. January 23rd, this is how we start. You know, here you guys are barely, you know, abnormally dry up in here. Most of South Dakota is pretty good. You know, this is this big, ugly, red bullseye hickey that how we started 2023. Kansas, if you count down, I'm 3 down, 4 over. This is right in here. We farm a little bit up in this county up here too, but the right in here is mainly where we're farm is located in Kansas. How fast it can change. Last year I was at a conference and Brian Bledsoe, I don't know if anybody, you guys follow some of his stuff, was like, you're going to break it. You're going to break this cycle. And he was right. Southwest Kansas and a lot of Nebraska caught some of this. This is where the snowpack lagged from their last snows last year, that they had a good blizzard that came through, and they did break it. I have a good friend that's down here in Southwest Kansas, and I believe he was at 27 inches for the year. on a 15-inch average rainfall. So still a big part of Kansas is still facing drought as of now, where we're at. We did receive an inch 80 right before Christmas, which was my third measurable rain that was over a half inch for the year. So typically, I think most of our fields were in that 7-inch fall rainfall amount this year. The difference that you guys will see that we farmed quite a little different than you is this map. I'm sure it's really hard to see, but this is 90 inches of annual evaporation. You just heard, Glenn talk about evaporation too on what they saw in their operation. So I'm in this 90 in here, and most of South Dakota is in the 40 and 50-inch fall of evaporation, pan evaporation. Most of you know how the pan evaporation, they capture it in the pan and then measure it out. So I would say this slope of the eastern Colorado and some of us, these last 2 years, we've been probably like 120 to 130 with this number right now. So we get an inch of rain, we're probably evaporating 80% of that pretty fast if we don't have the ground covered and implement a lot of these soil health practices. So when you're going through D4, 3, 2 drought, year 2, that's kind of your breakfast mindset. When you wake up, you're just like, what are we going to have to go see that's dying again? And this was in year 1 and year 2 of that. Year 3, you kind of forget the bowl of cereal. You just kind of start thinking, made me think that Zach's comment, the bourbon made me do it. I like that. I was like, that fits in this really pretty well, And so as this, it's really great that we have a good network of guys. You can joke about it, and we try to pick each other up because there's always somebody that's worse off than you. And, we got to the point where this was getting pretty tough. We were burning through a lot of equities. You're watching everything fail. And we moved into the hard stuff. And this is the one that got tough because we started going to this. So as I'm sitting up here at 25 pounds heavier than I was last year, this is what we went to. You just kind of start chasing all these demons of what you got going on when you're trying to get out of the mindset. What does regenerative ag mean to me? And there's so many buzzwords about it and what it is, but I think it's a systems approach to change what has been done in the past to better one's livelihood. So, and this will be done through, increasing your soil health. So there's so many of these buzzwords that are floating around, that you hear. You're going to hear them all through these conferences and everything like that. And so we'll talk about a few of them. Regenerative certification versus organic, right? So this is a lot of talk that you keep hearing about in this. And I am a regenerative farmer. That's what I believe we do. I am not organic, nor do I ever want to be organic, and I don't want to be forced to be organic. I want to stay regenerative. So that's kind of where we think on that mindset for our farm. Carbon and farming the farmer. Terry and I, we talked about this last night, a lot of this farming the farmer. This is probably one of the things is hard for me to swallow now, is to see tons of people taking advantage of us to better themselves that are promising us the pipe dream, right? Promising something that's coming 5 years from now. So when you look at carbon intensity scores, be wary. I've never signed a carbon contract yet. I'll probably be the last one because like right now I'm probably very carbon negative. And if I signed a contract, the wrong one, and I'd have to be paying money back right now, that'd probably really suck. And so that part of it, just be careful, There's a lot of companies out there. If you need a regenerative certification, that's great. If you probably are direct marketing beef, you're doing small packaging. But if you're selling to an elevator, there's no reason for you to go get an $11,000 certification to sell grain to the elevator. Just be smart about what you need to do with that. Marketing and greenwashing, we were a victim of this in 2022. We wrote a contract to sell regenerative barley and milo to the pet food industry. And we got $9 a bushel for our barley, and we got, I believe it's $7 or $6 for the milo. And it was a little bit of a struggle getting it there, a lot of hoops to jump through when you're looking in the pet food or the food industry. Hurdles to go through, you got to go have your facilities inspected, and you got to have like magnets on all the augers. Any place you have an open point where the grain's moving, you know, they want magnets on there to catch anything that would go in there. And so in 2023, we were offered $4 a bushel for the barley, and we were offered, I think it was $4 a bushel for the milo also. And at that time, I could go sell it to the local co-op, my milo, for $1 more. You know, so we got hit pretty hard with that. Finding out that all that stuff that was still coming in at $4 was being shipped in out of Canada by rail, and it's not regenerative grown. But this company also just released a label, new label for their marketing of Regenerative. So I believe 1/100% of my barley is probably still being used right now, even though, you know, it's gone. But, you know, they're still using this as a marketing tool that now they don't want to come pay me after the first initial set of what we had going into it. So unfortunately, just be careful. There's so much greenwashing on all this that's going around. Do your homework. You know, if you find a good market, trust it, do some research, talk to somebody that's been in it, and hopefully it doesn't just lead to something that could be worse down the line. This was our typical start. This is what we grew up doing, was driving, you know, this tractor, tilling the soil. Today, probably the most important thing on our farm is the drill. This is kind of more the heavy residue, like we like to try to keep on the surface as much as we can. When we started out, our soil organic matter was at 0.07. Pretty platy soil. There's not much color in this when we started out, and just years of doing what our ancestors knew what they could do, and that's what it was. So today, soil organic matter is probably closer to 2.5. We still have some short platy stuff here, which is a lot of still just fertility disturbance and chemical disturbance that the soil is still processing. You know, it's living, it's trying to eat up all this disturbance. You know, whatever it is, even if it were no-till, chemical is a disturbance. And, you know, and the principles are minimize that disturbance. So we try to figure out how we can do different ways to minimize that disturbance. I was digging a pit here, and like with a backhoe, you know, and as farmers, we're tight asses, right? So instead of bringing that pipe all the way over, you know, I cut it and went this way. It's my own fault, but the picture of this soil is, this is the topsoil. This is virgin soil in our land, right? So we have about 1 foot before we turn into hard clays and badger dirt, we call it. But what's interesting, if you guys can see it, and I don't know if it's really hard, so this is where the trencher went when we trenched. One disturbance of putting in that pipe, I lost all the black down that one stripe of where where we trenched it to put it in. And I just caught that in this picture here the other day when I was loading this. I was like, wow. So what can we do if that's one disturbance? What happens with 100 disturbances, 200 disturbances? So when we had goals and we started looking at cover crops and regenerative, you know, wind erosion, water erosion, I was tired of bouncing that tractor through those washouts that we had. You know, we had some serious hard pan issues in our soil. Soil health and sustainability. And if you or anybody that farmed through the early 2000s, we heard this word constantly. You need to be sustainable to pass that on to your next generation. You got to be sustainable. Whatever you do, you got to be sustainable. This sustainability almost broke us and turned us into what I call the moron, right? I put on more product, more chemical, more of everything that I was told that I needed to put on, and became a huge moron trying to sustain a degraded system. So that was the problem. We were flawed from the beginning, trying to sustain this degraded system that wasn't supporting itself. Problems starting out, our seed cost, you know, my first cover crop was $70 an acre for an oat pea radish mix. Hard to find them. Be honest, this one was probably the toughest struggle to get through when we started this, was crop insurance and FSA. And having your drill ready to go to March, you know, it sucks laying out there in February trying to work on something, so we had to learn to plan a little bit better. In September, you fix everything that broke on the drill instead of just parking it in the shed. Herbicide carryovers, my wife will admit to this, I finally had to start reading labels, you know, and figuring out stuff instead of just winging it. There's so many herbicides that have such a long carryover on legumes. You know, and so we really had to start watching what we were doing. How did we incorporate this? I went to a lot of these things, and I mean, like you just saw with Zach, you know, these things start small scale, but then they got to ramp up to big scale, right? And so I was the same thing. I went to these conferences and found out, you know, guys were doing this on 100 and 200 acres, and then I'm like, well, how do we incorporate this into 5,000 acres? Getting your landlords to understand what's going on out there, you know. Highly competitive world of land, right? And so everybody's going to be at that landlord's ear going, hey, he's got a mess out there. I can do so much better at that. But if you educate them and explain to them what's going on, they know right about there, like, oh no, it's just his cover crop, you know? So that helped us out quite a little bit. Probably, you know, Zach being an engineer style and all that, you know, we designed this right, but user experience is probably going to be the best indicator of what's going on. We always kept hearing this from different people too, that they're like, well, it works when it rains, right? You know, you get into a 40-inch rainfall environment, it works great. I won't go through all of them, but I'll let you look that these were the savings that these guys were getting per acre using, you know, more of a regenerative approach. This is the rainfall. I just divided their savings back. It's interesting. We're all the same. You do the regenerative practices. Doesn't matter what rainfall you get. It's what you do with that rainfall to capture and keep it, you know. So our farm all the way to Indiana to Texas, you know, it didn't matter. Must for us was when we switched to the stripper head, you know, keeping that residue on here. That was probably the biggest key for us, was one of the transition or management decisions to make was for that. I still think this is the key, coming to these conferences, you know, learning from everybody else. We have to keep educating, whether it's government agency and or other fellow producers. This is the key to doing this. This is us hosting a field day, dug a soil pit, talk about it, you know. This is before we went to the pit. We were sitting right beside the highway just talking about it. This is the first time I was introduced into the rainfall simulator. If you guys have ever seen that from NRCS, very valuable tool, awesome thing to see. It's even more awesome when your soil is on that and you watch it perform, you know, because there's always that risk that you don't know how it's going to quite do. So most of what I end up talking about a lot is the economics of what we did and where we're at and what we're trying to achieve today on here, but I've still come across so many producers that don't know how to figure their net profits on their farm. They just don't, they weren't realized. So, you know, quick examples, if you have 50 bushels, market price of $820, you have a gross revenue of $410, and if you spent $375 an acre to put that crop in, that means you're going to walk home with $35 an acre profit. You know, it's not too hard to simple, you know, it's pretty simple math, but it's just amazing me how many guys don't realize, you know, people realize on their farm that they don't know that. The one I like most is the break-even bushels. You know, this is how we factor a lot of stuff, how we figure it out. You know, that if I have $249 total inputs in it and my harvest price is at $830 or my marketable price would be $830, I need 30 bushels to break even. So this is where we start figuring out how our risk management needs to be designed to make this profitable. So this is a spreadsheet that I built, and this is, we're going to try some irrigated corn. These wells we have, this will be my first year trying this irrigation. We have 550 gallon a minute wells, but we're going to plant this corn at 16,000 population. Probably generally irrigated in my areas, 33 to 38,000 is probably where the population is. This variety I'm going to plant is phenomenally double earing corn. I know the genetics at double ears very well. So our fertilizer, seed, and the only thing that won't change will be the chemical cost in here, but my fertilizer and my seed are all going to be for this low population corn. So when we're all said and done with our pumping cost and everything in here, we're anticipating we're going to have 388 an acre in here. So how this risk management tool we designed this for is, this number right here is RMA. So most of you guys are familiar with your APH on your fields, right? So this APH is going to be 165. I'm going to ensure that at the 70% level, which is going to give me 116 bushels cash guarantee from RMA, from the government crop program. Okay, so that price is going to be set pretty close to around $5. I mean, it's fluctuating a little around there right now. Probably going to set at $5. So I realistically think I can harvest 145 bushel corn off of this. And I'm thinking, I'm praying the market's going to hold at 475. This could be a 425 pretty easy, but if I was smart, I'd probably be marketing some stuff right now to try to lock that price in. But that gives me, if I harvest this 445 bushels, I'm going to get a return of $300.75 an acre. After the inputs costs are pulled off of that, that leaves my production cost at $268 a bushel. So that's your target number, right? I mean, that is as low as I really want to go if I make this scenario happen. My break-even bushels are 78 bushels. Typically, that could be a dry land yield in our area. So pretty doable on this. But the note to see is that this guarantee is above my break-even bushels. So at this point, we have zero risk of my own equity out of pocket above to have this. And so we talked a little bit last night, what number would I be comfortable with of this risk if I do need to increase it? You know, and I would say if I got up around 15% of my own cash that's going to be out here, if I have a catastrophic failure, is going to be gone, that's probably as high as I'd want to go, is 15% risk on that. So this is a Milo, so if we would do Milo instead of the corn, our break-even bushels are 58, cost of production is 283. Unfortunately, this is why corn is king, because it will flex probably, I don't know if I can get much over that 100. Depending on what we do, we probably can, but to be very safe, but it's only a $192 return versus the $300. So it's a $100 return for another $100 investment per acre. Does anybody have questions on some of these formulas or anything right now while we're going along? Okay. So again, that's that. So now look at dryland Milo. This one gets to be where it's a little bit more risky for us. So if we ended up following this scenario, I'd be at 3% of my own equity at risk if I had a catastrophe. Wheat. This is the tough crop that is probably for everybody in Kansas. So right now, typically we've been harvesting probably a little below our APHs. And so right now, if we would harvest a 25 bushel wheat crop coming up at this, we're going to lose $113 an acre. And I'm at 32% risk of the equity I put into that. $263 is at risk of my own equity. So like I told you, I'd probably be 15% would be top end of it. So that's a management tool decision that we're going to make on there. You know, Glenn talked about it earlier, this, you know, in the keynote just a little bit ago. Their management decision gave them a whole nother ranch. And this is, the risk is okay, but it's the management that is the key to make all this work, because if you don't figure out you want to make that change, or if you make that change, how much is going to hurt you, but that's why we like to figure the risk back. If we did decide to get that, take this 32%, it might work out for us, it might not work out for us, but I'm not willing to take that risk with my own money. So when we were chem fallowing in these operations, we were doing like 4 operations. This is kind of what it cost us, 21, 28, do the 2, second, third, and fourth. In 2022, if we chem fallowed, it would have cost us $105 an acre just in chemicals. Thank God those inputs have come down some, or we'd just be in big trouble. So if we would look at a scenario, let's put a cover crop in that place. The cost of the seed, the drilling, the cost to terminate that would have been $51 an acre. You know, I could tell you, and we've seen this many times on our farm, the minute we make a decision to put the cover crop in, we're way ahead of the chemical cost right away. So, and then after you spray those chemicals 4 times on some of these weeds, we got so many chemicals that we can't, or so many weeds we can't touch with chemicals anymore. They're all resistant. Typically an oat mix, oat, pea, radish, rape. There might probably sunflowers in there, but they never come on until late. So we probably switch to a flax in these mixes is what we typically drill in that scenario. But what it led us to, after we started looking at per crops, how much we're making per crop with our risk management, then we started looking at our rotations. Let's look at a 3-year window. What happened in that 3-year window? And in those 3-year windows, we looked at the conventional Chem fallow cover crop inserted in here. And this was our eye-opener. We did 2 years of milo stacked behind each other, and then followed that up with a cover crop to keep the residue and then try to keep everything cycling. We went from a $3 loss to $187 in that 3-year period. So that was probably the thing. And so what was really interesting, this is the problem crop right here. And so when we kept looking at these scenarios, wheat was always the problem. Wheat was causing us to lose money, ties up 16 months of growing season if you do it the fallow period in here. And so it's tough. So then that milo, we decided, what happened if we put a cash crop barley crop in there, and then would come back to a wheat, and wheat would not be in our rotation on that. After this, we would go to triticale or rye for seed production. But man, we went that, just even doubled that return by adding that barley crop in there. So most of my neighbors were on this rotation, and so they get 2 crops in 3 years, and we're getting, you know, almost 4 crops in 3 years. Definitely getting 3 crops in 3 years. Typically, we'd always get these guys to tell us too, why do I plant wheat? Because it's a great environment to plant your corn and milo into, and it is. It's a wonderful, that wheat stubble is a great environment to do it. But then once we saw that we were losing money, I thought it would look like it's more just a cash flow issue, because this is what great-granddad and everybody did. They set up all your debt to be structured around when your harvests were. You harvest, you pay down your debt, you know? And so the banking system, unfortunately, I don't know if has changed a ton in that, but your banker really doesn't care whether you lost $10 an acre or you made $10 an acre, as long as you pay down that line of credit. That's all he cares about. And that's what I think the wheat crop led to, was it was just money coming in, money coming out. So when we were chem fallowing and doing all these spray operations, this is what I always thought, you know, if I saw this, you know, I'm gonna go out and kill it. I want those clean, beautiful fields with nothing growing on them. But when we looked at that, when I was telling you, when we were doing those chem fallow operations, in that one here, that sprayer was running 9 to 10 times in that 3-year rotation. By us dropping down into that milo cover, we were back down to 2 to 3 operations, almost 1 operation a year with that sprayer in those 3-year time periods. And if you look at just the $6, which is what the University of K-State tells me my application rate should be in Kansas, is $6 an acre. You know, we already had $36 savings over that traditional rotation versus just a milo cover. So I won't explain a lot of these, but if you just want to look at the nets and just see where we're at, these numbers here are my farm average, and this is my marketing average. And I get a lot of people that complain, they're like, well, we didn't sell 385, you know, wheat in 2016. I'm like, well, I'm not your marketer. You know, I had a marketing person hired that helped me market at that time and that. But look at the numbers, you know, and then we see these just as you go through. 2016, we had some pretty good years. 17, we'll talk about that later. Well, I guess we'll talk about it now. Complete held out, right? So I lost the whole crop. Everything, that's tasseled corn. And we had hail just come through and just wiped us out. All this here, you know, you see that's all the leaves, the stalks, everything was just down here. It was just an unbelievable, crazy hailstorm that we had. 2018, we had a pretty nice average. So my APH, obviously, you guys saw in there, a lot of it's 35 bushels. You know, we had a really good above average crop, and what we still lost $25 an acre in it. If I, you know, would have been, I needed 54 bushel to break even is what I needed in there. Milo that year, we had a 77 bushel average at 45, making us a $200 return on that. 2018 was the first year we decided to plant soybeans and try green planting soybeans. So in western Kansas, I will tell you, you'll never see these videos on YouTube of us roller crimping rye this tall. We do not get that. It will not happen. If I would let that triticale go to get this tall, I will not have a soybean crop behind that. I would burn up all my moisture with that cover crop. So knowing your context, your environment, what you can do, if you're in the mood and you guys can do it and you're looking for roller crimpers, look in western Kansas. A lot of guys bought them. and they're wanting to sell them because we can't grow the biomass to roller crimp. And if we do, it's going to hurt us long term for a cash crop back behind that. But anyway, so we planted these soybeans. Right after planting, we terminated. Obviously with Roundup and whatever, it took probably, a week and a half for it. So this is probably about 2 weeks later when we come back and took that picture. So we had really good beans in 18 when we did this. And that was no pre or post emerge herbicide with those soybeans. So this is where we're thinking, we got this licked. This is great. This was another field of soybeans where we did not green plant. We just did the tributes. This has a pre-emerge, a post-emerge, and the pigweed still eating me up in those soybean fields. So next year, I'm thinking I'm Captain Soybean, right? So we plant soybeans again, and then reality come in and check me. This is probably more like what we would average in our area, 15 bushels. And so we lost 44 bucks an acre. We had some oats that we took to grain. Corn was this kind of averaging. So we're still doing pretty decent in 19, some decent profits. 19 too, we were doing foxtail German millet. We do White Wonder and Golden. And I use most of those back through our seed business. So I didn't really have a market for that. In 20, we got a little braver. We started doing a little more crops. 76 bushel here on the milo, 80 on the corn, 45 on triticale, 22. So these are prices that I sold my seed business this back from the farm, So these are I sold the triticale at 7, 18 for the winter peas, oats, millet, mung beans. This was the new 2 crops that we were trying, flax and mung beans. Mung beans were a complete disaster. We have tried these 2 more times thinking we can do this, and both times we just can't get them. By the time they want to mature and I can actually harvest them, most time the pods are falling off. We just can't get out there to get them in timely and get them off. So flax, we actually cut a decent flax crop, but when you're wanting that back for seed and you have bad germination, it was a big loss for us. So in 2020, being from the wheat state, I just can't give up on this crop, right? We got to get it. There's a lot of pressure on there. But what we did different was now we're going to low input farm it. We're going to use more of a regenerative approach on this. But what I did, and what most producers don't do, that's my budget. I'm not spending $1 more above that amount, because with the current price that was in 2020 at $4.48, I needed that with a farm APH on that farm was 31 bushels, very minimum risk to do this. So that is why we built this whole system. And when we harvested that, we were right at that 30 bushel, it was just right there. So basically we had no risk, but we didn't have a good year and we didn't get any reward out of that. But it told us we can do low input wheat. We just have to build it from the top down instead of just keep buying inputs and being the moron and keep putting more on before we get to the top end. But I just want to share some of our experiences that we had when we decided to make this whole systems approach shift to low input farming. Most guys, you don't want to go talk about your debt load, but your debt load is crucial to this. If your debt load is so high and you try to make regenerative work, you're going to fail. It's going to fail, And we were fortunate enough to have a bank at one time that would go out and allowed us. What we saw especially was we were having a hard time repaying back, especially you saw those yields. We were profitable, but we were still not getting our line of credit paid down 100%. And so we got to a point where, they're just like, oh, the banker's like, don't worry about it. Well, if you short yourself 100,000, now you're operating 100,000 less for the whole next year already. And it just turned into a bad can of worms. We were able to schedule that out over a 5-year and start with that whole line of credit to try to figure out how we're going to get back out of this debt deal and restructuring it. Today, I don't think the banks would, if you're short $100,000 on your line of credit, I think they're just going to either pull your line of credit or they're just going to not renew you for any more. It's not in there. But example was, I needed $1 million gross income. That first year we dropped down, I had $750 750,000 gross income. My debt was built around this million, but you know what? That 750,000, when we did the numbers, was one of the most profitable years I had. But I had too much machinery, I had too much debt load, that even though it was the most profitable year I ever had, I was structured wrong. So us as farmers, we have an ego problem. All of us have, you know, we're proud people. Most generally, when you're in trouble, what do? You dig harder, you work harder, you're gonna get out of this debt. And it doesn't always work that way. I was just at a conference here 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to a farmer that was probably in his 40s, and his dad was sitting beside it. And we got talking about economics and this stuff, and I told him, I said, you know, if it has no value on your farm anymore, you need to get rid of it. And he looks at his dad and he's like, see, I told you, you know? And his dad just looked at him and was like, I don't know. And I'm like, so what do you want to get rid of? And he's like, we got 3 tractors that are 2 are backups in case the planting tractor goes down. I'm like, get rid of them, sell them, you know, get yourself flowing again. And I think his dad's still in that 60, 70-year-old mindset. What's the neighbors going to think if I start selling off equipment? You know, what are they going to talk about? What is it? And I just said, I think it's much better that you sell it off just saying, hey, that's an old junker tractor, we just got to get rid of it, than when it's the bankruptcy sale down there, you're going to get more talk about that. So we got to eat that ego and do what's better. Banks, it's cash flow. You know, they're all looking at, you got to be able to pay that line of credit or they're not going to be being able to lend you any money. For us in Kansas in 2019, where we were heading, and I think Alex showed it with that numbers, you know, we had 36 Chapter 12 filings. And these asterisks that you see in these things, that's decade high. So South Dakota was good, you guys. North Dakota, South Dakota, you know, was really good at 13. Kansas was horrible. We had 36. If it wasn't for the Trump bucks, the MFPs, all this money, that bailed us out. And the banks don't think, they weren't lobbying. They saw nobody was repaying their lines of credit, you know. Kansas had a bankers group lobbying for a second round of MFPs and all this to come. Gigantic bailout, you know, is what pretty much saved a lot of farms, my neighbors and everybody in our area. So in 2021, I just want to show you kind of what we're at on our farm. It's not always fun to just throw your dirty laundry out at everybody and say, here's my numbers, here's where we're at. But we had $55,000 in equipment loans. I have a line of credit of $500,000, so I need to repay back $555,000. That year we had 2,400 acres of cash crop corn to market. And if you see what we had, you know, in 20, we have a lot of crops growing on our farms. But I'm trying to make the farm flow not by growing cover crops for my seed business. I want it to flow by growing the cash crops that it has. So cash price in 2021 is $6. I needed 92,500 bushels to repay that. I needed a 38 bushel average. So this is the key number right there. My risk. I'm covered of a complete catastrophe. I'm covered. You know, so that helped out. How many of you have heard or seen the book of the Can I Be My Own Farmer, Farming Without the Bank, Mary Jo? You know, so this is the same principle we're using of it. The little different switch we do, we're not doing whole life deal. We set up a money market to use as my line of credit. We shift some retirements around. So where we're at today is I have a $500,000 money market that we use as our line of credit. This year we earned $7,000 on that money market. I have this with the same bank, so I can just pull my phone out, transfer money a couple times a year. This is what we're doing. Another thing that helped us save, being our own banker, we went to enterprise crop units on everything, which find me later, I'm running short on time, but I'll talk to enterprise. That saved me $27,000. But this $7,000 is money I made. I saved $25,000 if I would have been paying 8% and 9% interest. So $32,000 savings by trying to be my own banker. I just wanted you guys to watch to notice that we were sliding our yields down, but we were still making money. And that was kind of the key that I just wanted to show on here is just with a 20% reduction, our bushels are down, but our profits are up. I'm going to be short on time. what I'll leave you with is when we were doing these mung beans and this, we noticed in the seed production side, we were monoculture again. And so now we started growing proso millet, mung beans, rye, winter peas, triticale. That's the hairy vetch blooming out here. There's another picture of the vetch, oats and flax. So we're trying to just improve the system. So 2022, this is Charlie Brown corn. Looks sad when you come out. This is right when it tasseled. One highlight, we have gone back to some sunflowers. The market for sunflowers sucks right now. I think it's going to be like 15 cents probably a pound, but they made it through the drought, our drought. Our soil is changing. We went from the 7.5. I look at stuff in numbers. That's 350% increase over 20 years. 17.5% is better than a CD, right? So I think I'll keep investing in my soil. So these are just our goals now. Soil health, more roots to feed the livestock, hard pans and regenerative, more of our product. Quickly on here, you can do CSP, equips if you want to call this. This acronym, if you're a government employee, this is can't stop paperwork. So there's a lot of paperwork in those programs, so they need to rename them a little bit maybe. The equip, what I had said, equip yourself for a bottle of aspirin. That's what the equip stands for. So in summary, we reduced, right now we're about 1/3. Our goal is to be at 50% reducing on chemicals and fertilizers. Don't be afraid to try something new. This is why we want to do no-till. I don't want to be caught as the plow. To go down the right path is never the easier path. I can talk to you later about what's the best use of government funding, structures or practices. So find me afterwards because I know I'm out of time. There's my contact information. I'm only LinkedIn. I'm not a YouTube farmer. And I'm not on LinkedIn that great, but the last thing is just the same as the South Dakota coal side. I'm the vice chair of Kansas's. We just formed this 3 years ago. We are new. So if you're in a state that doesn't have that, definitely look to try to form these. Look at other states. We're all sharing information of how to start these alliances so we can keep promoting what we got. Sorry I ran over. Thank you.
We do have minutes for just a couple questions. If there's any, then we could probably see a little bit.
Yeah. So I had an hour-long presentation that they gave me 50 minutes for, so we're a little tight.
Hey, on your break-even chart, I know you use biologicals. Are those accounted for?
In the fertilizer price.
They're in the fertilizer. Okay.
They are in the fertilizer price. Yes. Yes. 100% correct. Yes.
So, if you're saving money by reducing inputs, where is the savings coming from? Is it from? Are you maintaining yields with less inputs, or is it?
No, I mean I showed you. My yields are sliding down. I'm not maintaining yields. So a lot of that is my context of where I'm at right now. You know, if it doesn't rain, I'm going to slide on yields. You know, so that's probably some of it. But go ahead and finish your question. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt that.
So that the profit then you're saying comes from the input.
Yeah, fertilizer reduction, but then I want to show you, you know, I'm making, instead of 10 trips across that field with a sprayer, I'm making 3. There's $36 savings in there. I'm using enterprise units, that's a savings. You know, this is, you know, right now, I mean, we still track what we do per crop, profitables, but I don't care. Those last slides where I got to repay that $555,000, that's king. That's where it's at right there. If you don't repay that back, you're not going to be in operation, you know. So you got to learn how to adjust all of your stuff. A lot of our decision making, like I said, we just build those tools and you find out if it's worth the risk to do that. If not, then it might be, we've done a regen year where we just plant cover crops and let it regen. You know, I'd rather do that than plant a wheat crop that's going to lose me $50 an acre. And then my nephew's bringing in the cattle slowly to help integrate that, so that's where we can try to you know, make that regen year work for us long term.
What's your herbicide program look like on your small grain and late crops?
Yeah, so like so it's tough because there's a lot of stuff we follow Milo with. So Milo would have had a broadleaf control, Callisto type scenario in there. We have probably compensated a little bit of carryover sometimes with seeding rate a little bit. We'll just up at 10% maybe on that, but we cannot grow milo without dual atrazine and Callisto. It just, if not, we'll have a weedy pigweed mess, you know. And so it makes it challenging. We typically like to follow those crops if we can with an oat type mix, you know, but we'll just see, you know. I mean, a lot of those where we're intercrop or companion running with the vetch, if we only get 2 pounds of vetch out of that whole mix, you know, per acre, I mean, I get 2 pounds out of it, you know. It's just, it is what it is. We got a set of spirals. We normally separate what we can out. And then that, even though it might only be 3 tote bags, that's 3 tote bags less that I got to go buy from somebody else. So, but it's complicated. I mean, but we went away from a lot of residual herbicides, if we can, to just, you know, on contact stuff and going like that. What biologicals are we using? So right now we're using Organics. I don't know if you've heard of that product or not. That's the one that we're using on our farm. I'm going to be a horrible salesman because I'm, you know, a rep for that too in my area. We're already running a quart of it per acre and seeing the same results as running the full rate of half gallon. Now, environment might change, I don't know, but you know, I'm the guy that I'm a tight ass, and so I'm always pushing it. If you tell me I need to put down a quart of this, I'm going to do half and see how it responds. You know, and if it, you know, fails miserably, then you were probably right. But half these companies, their labeling is way above, so you can cut a lot of that down right off the bat. So, and our phosphorus system, we're putting 2.4 pounds of phosphorus in a water-soluble, dry flowable that I slurry, make that in there. And then we add the biology right when we go to the field. But we have not had any phosphorus issues by only applying 2.4 pounds per crop.
Is this whole next, is that making the phosphate you've got more available?
Probably so, yeah, yeah.
With that, thank you, Brice.
Thank you guys, I'll hang around and